Shalom to Dr. Irving Leibovics, co-chairman of Am Echad. Welcome to Israel.
Pleasure to be here.
So first of all, a few words about this organization. 30 years ago it was founded?
Yes, originally this organization was founded by Rabbi Moshe Scherer, who was the executive director of Arutz Sheva of America. We participated at that time in 2 missions to Knesset with a goal to try to portray the traditional message from traditional Jews to the Knesset that were at that time only hearing one side of the story from
When
America,
you say traditional, you're talking about Orthodox.
Orthodox, traditional, observant, whichever way you want to call them.
Many definitions. This
We
was to counter what?
At that time, the issue was who was a Jew, Yehudi. And we had very, very successful meetings and discussions in Knesset. We kind of reinvigorated the organization in 2017, 2018. And
Again, to counter something?
At that time, it was mostly the issues around the Kotel. And there was already beginnings issues about the Rabbanut, about conversion, about marriage, about all the various issues that are involved in religion here in Israel.
This is basically to counter the notion that we sometimes hear in Israel. Listen, it could be that here in Israel there's different, demographically things are differently, but we have to understand that American Jewry, the Reform and Conservative are very strong, and we need to understand what their opinions are regarding, for example, the Western Wall.
Correct. And the message that was coming from Reform and Conservative Jewry was that they represent all of American Jews, and American Jews are disconnecting from Israel because of these kind of policies that affect religion in Israel, like the Kotel, like Gior, like these types of things. And our goal was to come in to give a more accurate picture of what American Jewry looks like and what American Jewry really cares about. And it turns out that most of American Jewry is not interested in the Kotel, is not interested in Gior, and halavai that they would be interested in Israel. That's more of a problem. To come here, to come to Israel and create discord and to create fighting and to create a balagan on an issue that is not going to change anything in terms of what American Jewry, how they're going to respond to Israel, is not the right approach. Rather, let's put our efforts into educating American Jews, about Judaism, and through that, coming close to Israel.
Now you're talking about numbers, because in terms of numbers, Reform, Conservative communities are larger than the Orthodox,
so
right?
If you actually drill down into the numbers, and that was done in the recent study that came out of the Pew Institute. They did a study in 2013 and in 2020. And by the way, our analysis of that is that they severely undercounted the Orthodox community in America for various reasons, which we can get into. But the bottom line is, even with their study, what comes out is that if you talk to people and you ask them, how do you identify? And what are you, a Reform, Conservative? Not? So you'll get a large number of Reform Jews. But what came out in their study was that a larger number are unaffiliated. And even out of the ones that identify as Reform Jews, less than half of them actually attend a Reform synagogue. And 25% of those who identify as Reform attend the Chabad synagogue. So it's once you get down into the numbers, in reality, maybe 14% of American Jewry from the last study are members of Reform synagogues, and 9% of them are members of Orthodox synagogues. So the numbers are not as strange or disproportionate as one thinks.
Now, when you come to Israel, you're meeting officials. I understand that you met Diaspora Minister Nachman Shaya yesterday. What's your message to them?
So our message is that you are concerned about diaspora. We are concerned about diaspora. We care about diaspora as much, if not more, about the connection to Israel and the connection to Judaism. And we know that if you're connected to Yahadut, you'll be connected to Israel. And if you're disconnected from Judaism, you're going to be disconnected from Israel. Even within various aspects of the liberal communities, those who are connected to Israel, in fact, are not pro-Israel. They're actually more in favor of the Palestinians, and they'll support that. You have J Street, and you have BDS movements and things of that nature. And even within that community, there's a negative issue that we have to stand up against. So the message is we need to educate diaspora Jewry, and we need to get together and work on that education program and put our efforts in that area.
Now, after you show, present, prove even that the Orthodox Jewry, the Orthodox communities are strong and big and influential, how do you connect to your brothers and sisters from the other parts of Jewish society?
So I'm going to tell you a story, a quick story. I had a Shabbat dinner in my home. We hosted a group from UCLA. Okay, it was a Shabbaton of some sort. We hosted them for a meal, and there were 20 freshmen from UCLA sitting around the table, most of whom knew nothing about Judaism. I went around the table and asked them for their names. You know, what's your name? Eldad. What's your name? Nisan. And I'm like, where are you from?
Israeli names.
Half of them were Israeli names. Second generation Yordim.
People who moved from Israel to...
Correct. Forget about Shabbat and forget about Kashrut and forget about Yom Kippur. I asked them, where did you get such a name? My father tells me that it's a common name in the Middle East.
In the Middle East.
This is the answer. I said, Middle East, so tell me, what do you know about Israel? Very little. Did you ever hear Melchemet Sheshet Yamim, Six-Day War? No. Who's Ben Gurion? One guy in the back raised his hand, he says, it's an airport. Okay? Who was he? A pilot? This is the discussion we're having.
So what did you learn from that?
So I learned from this, we actually brought an Avrech from Chevron Yeshiva to Los Angeles who was giving classes in the valley in Los Angeles, not about Yadut, about Israeli history, to the children of Yodim.
I would say that you're connecting
This is
both.
what we're trying to do.
Having a Haredi teaching about the Six-Day War is also very nice.
We brought him, and we have to bring somebody to teach about Israeli history to second-generation Israelis in America. This is the problem.
So it's about
this
connecting.
Is what we need to address.
It's about telling the story.
Correct.
Okay, Dr. Irving Leibovics, co-chairman of Am Echad, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure. Pleasure was mine.